Good evening, everyone. Thank you. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. My name is Jasper Dent. I'm the events coordinator for McNally Robinson, Saskatoon. I'd like to start off by acknowledging this event is being held on Treaty 6 territory. This is the land of the Cree, Dene, Soto, Dakota, Nakota, and Lakota, and homeland of the Métis. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the Saskatoon launch of Grounds for Murder by Betty Ternier Daniels, published by ECW Press. Thank you so much to Betty for being here tonight, and thank you also to Reverend Shawn Sanford Beck for joining us as host and interviewer tonight. I'd also like to thank Cassie Smith at ECW Press for working with us to make this event happen. We do have a few folks joining us online tonight as well. So we've got a web camera just up to your right here. Be mindful of that. We won't be filming the audience. It'll just be on the sort of makeshift stage up here. I'd also like to take this time to remind you all to silence or turn off your phones. Save yourself the embarrassment of getting a phone call in the middle of the event and us all staring at you, especially me. If you'd like to buy copies of Betty's book, we have some up at the signing table here, and there are also some on the desk by where you first came in. I'd like to introduce both our author and host for the evening. Betty Ternier Daniels lives with her husband, Doug, and their cat, Diesel, on her family farm in Cochin, Northwest Saskatchewan. Like her protagonist, she has 2 adult children and is a member of the National Farmers Union. She previously taught English as a sessional instructor for the University of Saskatchewan, and she's working on a sequel to Grounds for Murder. Perhaps more about that later. Reverend Shawn Sanford Beck is an ecumenical priest. Did I say that right? It's always my fear of getting up here and pronouncing something horribly wrong. And an eco-spiritual chaplain living and working here in beautiful Saskatoon on Treaty 6 territory. He's the author of 2 books, Christian Animism and A Prairie Rune. Shawn spent 8 years as Betty and Doug's farm neighbor and shares her deep love for the land and their farm community north of the Battlefords. He's pleased to be here tonight in dialogue with Betty about the mysteries of life, writing, and the joys and challenges of belonging to the land. Now, I believe Betty is going to come up and read a bit for you, so everyone please give her a very warm welcome.
Thank you, and thank you for coming out to my book launch. I'm going to read for about 13 minutes from the beginning of my book. Okay. Saturday, July 28th. My trouble started with a phone call in the afternoon of the storm. I'd been weeding perennials in the shade garden when my mobile rang. Lulled by birdsong and the trickle of water from a nearby fountain, I would have ignored the intrusion if the caller hadn't been my son. Jordan cut the social niceties. Good news, Mom. There's a Saskatoon realtor whose client wants to buy the farm. I wiped my hands on my denim shorts and groaned. If you mean Monica, she's already made me 2 offers. I told her I'm not interested. Her client's willing to pay big money, Jordan said. You won't get another opportunity like this one. Fine, since I don't plan to sell. The gardens are getting too much for you. He enunciated his words carefully as if he was speaking to an old woman. I know it's going to be hard to give up this place, but Dad would have wanted you to take life easier. Neither of us has any idea what he would have wanted. Besides, it doesn't matter. He's not here. I am. Jordan sighed. Tanya and I are worried. How will you manage come winter? I yanked at a thistle seedling that was crowding my favorite hosta. My daughter was a worrywart like her mom. Why the sudden concern for my well-being? Dad's been gone almost 6 months. If we hadn't spent 5 days with you after the funeral, you couldn't have coped. We were happy to be there, but what happens the next time a blizzard dumps 2 feet of snow? Neither of us can quit our jobs in Saskatoon. A peal of thunder caused me to look up at the darkening sky. The light was vanishing, the air suddenly still. I didn't want to think about blizzards or the coming winter. You've got to be sensible, Jordan said. Was I only imagining the note of desperation in his voice? Sweetheart, has something happened? You don't need money, do you? Geez, Mom. Then what's the problem? Monica can be very persuasive, he said. How do you know? We've had dealings. A gale force wind sprang up out of nowhere, and I had to yell to make myself heard over the sudden din. I hope there's no conflict of interest here. Oh, why would there be? Well, that's what I'm starting to wonder, I said, before ducking out of the way as a tree branch flew over my head. There's a storm brewing, and I'm in danger of decapitation by a flying missile. I'll call you back from the kitchen once I've made a cup of tea. I picked up my hand weeder and trowel and started for the house. Preoccupied by Jordan's call, I didn't notice Monica until she materialized in front of me. Oh, Jeannie, my dear, it's lovely to see you. I didn't return her smile. You've wasted your trip. You better go home before the storm hits. It already has, Monica said, dodging an airborne shingle as she followed me up the stairs and onto the deck. Diesel, my fluffy orange Maine Coon, yowled as he waited beside the back door. A good-natured fellow, he usually greets me with a friendly meow. This time he was pissed off by the storm and didn't care who knew it. I picked him up and snuggled him against my chest. Don't grumble about the weather, buddy. We need the rain. Thunder rumbled and a flash of lightning speared the sky. The temperature had fallen and I was unexpectedly cold. What I wanted was to curl up on the sofa with a hot drink, a mystery novel, and my cat. Instead, I had to cope with an unwelcome visitor. I'll give you shelter until the storm's over, I said to Monica as we entered the house, but we have nothing to discuss. Although the kitchen clock said 5:30, the sky was getting dark. A sudden spatter of rain, driven by the pounding wind, slammed against my windows. Outside, something heavy crashed to the ground. I turned on the kitchen lights, plugged in the kettle, and spooned decaf Earl Grey into my favorite teapot. Monica perched on a stool at the counter. I can't stay long because I'm meeting someone in Saskatoon for drinks at 8. Her cheeks glowed a delicate pink. If it were anybody but Monica, I'd have sworn she was blushing. He hates me being late. For a moment, I felt almost kindly towards her. Then you better not linger. It's a 2-hour drive. Although she must have been pushing 50, Monica looked like a runway model. Her short blonde hair was fashionably tousled, her face lightly tanned, and her makeup perfect. She wore a double-breasted suit, the color of ripe mango, and high-heeled navy sandals that shrieked Parisian couture. While I looked okay for a woman of 60, I wasn't in Monica's sartorial league. My t-shirt was grubby from gardening, the hem of my shorts needed mending, and the wind had tied my hair in knots. In well-cut clothes and with my shoulder-length bob freshly cut and colored, most days I could pass muster in a room full of younger women. That afternoon was not one of those days. My house, on the other hand, looked beautiful. At least I thought it did. Home decorating magazines gushed over the old farmhouse look, but my kitchen was the real thing. A wood propane cook stove, walls and ceiling of tongue and groove pine, handmade wooden cupboards, rustic ceramic tiles, and lots of artwork. Most of the paintings were mine, brightly colored pictures of my flower garden and the local prairie landscape. Sophistication be damned. I like cheerful folk art and the beauty of nature with a capital M. Monica got straight to business. You might want to reconsider, Jeannie. My client has increased their offer by 200,000. The kindly feelings vanished. Tell them to forget it. Think about it, she said. You could buy a luxury condo on the riverbank in Saskatoon and still have spare change. No more slogging in the garden. Beats working out in the gym. Monica ignored my retort. Your children don't want a farm. Isn't it time to start planning for old age? I spooned cat food into a bowl and placed it in front of Diesel. Leave my kids out of this. They're concerned about you living here alone. What if you had an accident and couldn't get to the hospital? These roads must be murder in winter. Iron hands clutched my chest. Could Monica be aware of the circumstances surrounding my husband's death? I took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. Wouldn't it be better to live near your kids? She continued, her smile exuding a nauseating sweetness. Think of family dinners every Sunday, weekly shopping with your daughter, morning coffee with friends. You've got 15 minutes to drink your tea if you want to be in Saskatoon by 8, I said. They want you to sell. Clairvoyant, are you? I took Tanya for lunch before she went on holidays, Monica said. She's been eyeing an exquisite cottage at Turtle Lake. Unfortunately, it's expensive. You talk to my daughter? Well, that's why I'm a successful realtor. Of all the underhand, it's good business practice, Monica said. Don't you want what's best for your children? Tanya and her partner earn more than her father and I ever did. Yeah, I'm darned if I'll sacrifice my farm because of their extravagance. Would you sacrifice it to protect your son's reputation, she asked. I looked at him in surprise. Oh, there's no need to do that. Monica laughed. Mothers are always the last people to hear about their children's misadventures. Jordan's phone call half an hour ago was starting to make terrible sense. If you've got something to tell me, I said, say it. Otherwise, finish your tea and get out. A little bird told me that Jordan's having personal issues at work. Personal issues? Although he's almost 40, Jordan's still my baby. I felt a sudden shiver of fear. As soon as Monica left, I talked to him again. Of a romantic nature. I don't believe it. Monica shrugged. The lady in question has a checkered financial history. I can't be more specific without betraying confidence. It's still, you know what these venerable institutions are like. They can't afford a scandal that would frighten off prospective donors. My son supervised publicity and fundraising for a major hospital in Saskatoon. He'd been divorced for almost a year now. I wasn't aware of a new woman in his life, but hey, I'm his mom. It would be a shame if the hospital fired Jordan. She put a cup on the counter and stood up. You might want to talk to him before you make your decision. I picked up Diesel and gave him a hug. He licked my cheek appreciatively. People who bully me come to regret their mistake. When it comes to fight or flight, I favor the latter, but Jordan's my son, and nobody gets away with threatening my kids. You're playing out of your league, Jeannie, Monica. Monica crossed to the window that overlooked the parking area east of the house. Thanks for the tea. Oh, God, my car. I rushed to the window. What's wrong? The rain had stopped, and the wind died down, but not before they'd created havoc. My own problem wasn't serious. Although the graveled parking area was ankle deep in debris, it wouldn't take more than a few hours to clear away the mess. My guest wasn't so lucky. Festooned with branches, its roof caved in and windshield smashed by the top of my prized silver maple, was Monica's red Lexus SUV. Oh no. I wasn't sure which was worse, the loss of my tree or the prospect of an unwelcome overnight guest. Monica's face was ashen, but she hadn't made it to the top of her field without stamina. Without a word, she pulled out her cell phone and started punching in numbers. My tow truck won't help, I said, putting Diesel on his favorite chair. And the nearest place to rent a vehicle is in Saskatoon. Damn. She slammed her phone on the table. I'll have to borrow your car. You're joking. Can you think of another way of getting to the city by 8? No, but I'll pay you $500 and return the car first thing tomorrow, she said. The alternative is that I sleep on your couch tonight. Neither of us wants that. I grabbed my car keys. Let's go. Tangled branches made the sidewalk almost impassable, but Monica, in her high-heeled shoes, navigated like a pro. When we reached the garage, I handed her the keys. Bring it back in one piece. Monica frowned. This old Prius is your car? The windshield was cracked and a dented bumper needed replacing. But it's not what you're used to driving, I said, but it is roadworthy. It's fine, she smiled hesitantly. Thanks, Jeannie. The reef storm was over and the sun was shining. Monica got into my car. I watched as she drove carefully down the driveway and onto the grid road. It was the last time I saw her alive. you.
Ooh. Cliffhanger, hey? Right on. Betty, look at all these people.
I know, isn't that wonderful?
They came. Right on. This is great. Thank you so much for inviting me to be in conversation with you. This is going to be a lot of fun.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
I'd like to say, yay, Unitarians, family members, National Farmers Union, miscellaneous people like that. Good support. Thank you very much.
Okay, I got to get my notes. Can you just
Okay.
hold this for a second?
Sure.
So first of all, Betty, congratulations.
Thank you.
This has been in the works for a while. I've had the privilege of sort of watching you from the sidelines as you've been doing all the work that a writer does and all the excitement that comes with the whole publishing process. And now the book is out in the world, and it's a little bit like having a new child out there. You just like a little baby that's gone out into the world.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that I experienced when I first had a book out was the nightmare of somebody coming up to me and going, "Oh, I hear you wrote a book. What's it about?"
Okay.
What's it about? It's like, it's about everything, really. But what is your elevator speech? If somebody has you trapped and you've got 30 seconds to tell them about the book, what it's about, no spoilers, what would you say?
A 60-year-old farm widow has an offer. A very persistent realtor wants to buy her farm. She doesn't want to sell it, and then the realtor is murdered under the assumption she's driving the protagonist's car, that it should have been the protagonist who was killed. Somebody wants her land really badly, and now what?
And now what? Okay. But you're not going to tell us now what. You're going to all have to read it to find out now what. So with a book like this, there's the story in the book, but there's also the story of the book. There's the story, how did this book come to be? Or what some people like to think of it as, when did this story come and tap you on the shoulder and say, I need this to be written? How did that come about?
I had just retired from teaching at the very beginning of the pandemic, and I needed a new project. So writing a novel seemed reasonable. I had been an English teacher, and I liked reading. And my husband and I have a farm that we're wondering what is future, and that was instrumental. But also, my sister, Judy, who lives somehow down the road and is a friend of yours as well, once said to me, I would die to defend my farm. Now, I wouldn't die to defend mine. But I realize that farmers sometimes feel really, really strongly about it. And what happens if someone's trying to take your farm away from you? And that's sort of what got me started thinking about this particular plot. How far would you go to protect your farm?
Right. Yeah. So why the genre? I mean, that's a big question to explore, a very serious question to explore. Why the cozy mystery?
Oh, because I like reading mystery novels. I want to write something that people would like. And there's all kinds of people writing really, really good books about important social issues, but they're not always read very widely because, you know, they're tough going. And a cozy is pretty easy to read. I think even though I deal with important social issues, I don't think anybody's ever said that my book's hard to read. Yeah.
Easy to read, was it easy to write? What was that process like for you?
I really like, I like writing, and I realized when I started writing this that I liked writing better than teaching. After all these years I spent teaching.
You don't have to deal with students when you're
That's
writing.
right. It's a lot of work. I mean, it took me 2 years to write this, and I'm working on my second novel, and it's gonna be 2 years also.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of writing and rewriting and reorganizing material. You think you have this idea, well, established in your mind, and you've got the outline in your head, you start writing, and there goes the outline.
Yeah.
Things keep happening that don't work, they start over again. Yeah.
I'm curious, again, without giving anything away, did you start with the solution and have to work your way back? Or did it sort of just grow as you wrote it?
Sort of grew, but I knew right away what I had the ending in mind when I started the book.
Right.
Yeah, and it's a question of what do you do with farmland? I want to look at issues like is private ownership of a farmland justified? What happens when people want land really badly and they have no money? What happens when they have to lose their farm because they can't afford to maintain it?
Mm-hmm.
So those are some of the issues I was sort of wrestling with.
Yeah, yeah. Lots of issues woven in and lots of land woven in. I mean, one of the things as I read the book, I could see in my mind's eye a lot of the places and the landscapes and the natural features that you described, because obviously we shared pretty much the same land for many years. Right. But there were also features that were new and unknown to me, or maybe just that I hadn't seen or that I wasn't envisioning correctly. But I'm curious, how did you blend the setting of the real farm with other things as well that might not have been, or was everything real in your mind? Could you see it all, or were there sort of places and obviously people, but places, parts of the geography that you were creating as well?
Well, to take an example, the house and the gardens and the yard and the farm is mine. My husband's house is our farm. But I wanted, for a variety of reasons, I wanted my protagonist to live on the lake shore. So I moved my farm down to where my niece's farm is. So I just moved a mile down the road, but it's yeah, so it's an amalgamation of two farms.
What did she think of that?
She thought that was great.
Did you ask permission?
No, I didn't. But she was pleased to have a farm in the park.
Excellent. That's great. That's so interesting. I didn't know that till much later. And I guess I was thinking to myself, the main character's walking down that road a lot faster than I remember it happening. Good stuff. Lots of fun. So Betty, a lot of your creative craft of writing over the past years has actually been as a dramaturge, as a writer and creator of drama, and you've been involved with Cochin Community Players, well, a founder of it, and been involved for many years. And this is a new genre. So how was it shifting out of writing plays, being a playwright, into being a novel writer? What was that like for you?
I love theater. I loved writing plays, but my plays were, I came to the conclusion that I wasn't cut out to be a playwright. That I wrote plays for community theater, but I couldn't write for professional theater. My plays weren't quite good enough. And somehow it was easier writing a novel. When you write a play, boy, you have narrow parameters. You don't have much space, much time for character development, for plot development. You have to stick to a fairly small area in terms of space.
Right.
I think I'd prefer writing novels.
Okay. Yeah.
I miss theater.
As I was reading it, in a lot of ways, I could almost see it being performed. I don't know if anybody else has mentioned that to you, but I could see the links to a dramatic genre. And so when you actually had it was really neat. Betty, what was it, about a month ago?
About that? Yeah, it was a month ago.
Betty invited some of the Cochin community players to actually do a dramatic reading of, I think was it this chapter?
The first two chapters.
Yeah, the first two chapters.
It was an hour-long read.
It was quite good, and it really did read well as drama. So I was just interested in like how that switch for you between.
That was fun. Yeah, I like doing that.
Yeah, that was good.
I realized when I'm writing, I have to write dialogue and description and sort of narrative action stuff and how people are feeling. writing dialogue is the easiest part of writing for me. I hate writing descriptions.
Okay,
Yeah.
because that's interesting because and those of you who have read some of it know that the descriptions are beautiful.
I'm glad that they're harder work than writing the dialogue.
So I wonder if that just sort of comes from your, deep embeddedness in that place and your love for it, right? And it was interesting your character talking about, folk art in that first chapter and nature with a capital N, That's I sense that's really important to you in your own life.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've been out there most of your life?
Yeah, some years away, the university, some years when Doug was working with our kids,
Yeah.
with her son, but yeah, I mean, that's always been my home.
It really comes through.
Yeah.
We said when we were chatting before, we're not to get too political about anything, because of course nothing political ever happens around here. But I am curious, and I didn't even tell you about this question. But I mean, you deal with lots of issues in this book, but one of the things that I'm curious about how you felt it out in the book was the whole notion of two solitudes, the rural and the urban solitudes. And you're somebody, in some ways, you live sort of both. I know you really appreciate the city and you love the country. You're both the city most, country most combined.
Yeah.
How did that play itself out in the book, in the writing, do you think?
Now, how could I think of saying this diplomatically?
You're among friends.
I get a really positive view of farm life, but as my fellow NFU members here would agree, farmers are not always the most politically progressive people. And I'm really conscious of that. I don't want to paint too rosy a picture of farm folks because I don't share their values quite often. And yet, as individuals, they're good, decent, salt of the earth type people.
Yeah.
And that's what I try and portray in my novel.
Yeah. Well, I asked the question because I do find that you strike a really interesting balance within the book. You touch on some of those issues, you touch on some of the politics, you touch on some of the real sort of conflicting values between sort of, progressive values and conservative. I love your activists down at the end of the road, and I sometimes wonder if you're writing about me. But no, it's really well done, the way that you're able to engage those issues, but through the reality of real people, and you don't caricature anybody in the novel. So I really appreciated that. The novel, it traces out a very complex murder plot, but it also deals with some pretty serious social and cultural issues of contemporary rural prairie life. Stuff that I know you deal with in your own very real context on the farm. And so I'm curious, did the writing help bring any clarity to you, to your own questions and your own struggles?
In theory, yes. In practice, no. Yeah. Sort of one of the things I thought about in this book a lot, though, is how do you deal with important issues without alienating people who don't agree with you? I think it's pretty easy to sympathize with my point of view in this book. The next book is going to be more challenging for me because the issues are looking at some conventional farming practices, which, and also at fundamentalist Christianity. And those are, I mean, they're not clear-cut issues. I have strong opinions, but they're not necessarily mainstream opinions. I don't want to alienate my readers, but too much. And so.
Do you find having characters that you can work through and that you can voice multiple opinions through? Is that helpful?
That helps.
Yeah.
That helps.
Okay. Yeah.
And I really make an effort to make my murderers, my villains, to give them a positive side.
Yeah.
I really made a strong effort, and I think I succeeded in that.
It's always good to have a sympathetic murderer. But it's true, because I mean, I know people, and you know people, you know, we probably lots of people know folks who have done very bad things, exercised violence. We live in some ways a very violent province, and yet we know that they're real people. That those things come out of real histories, real backgrounds, and I thought that the way you treated your character really honored that.
Thank you.
Was it a struggle to do that?
You know, no, because when I'm writing, I use people I know to imagine my characters, and it helps to think about people who have qualities they don't like, but have good qualities as well. And yeah,
The mix of human nature.
I really tried to be realistic. I wanted my people to be fairly real, and so I used my protagonist, myself, as sort of the model for my protagonist. And as a result, some people who read my novel thought my protagonist was way too opinionated and too harsh. Well, because people have said that about me, so.
Were you able to use that to sort of take off your filter and just let your real opinions come out?
Well,
Yep.
but
That's interesting.
I tried to improve her as she went along, to became a bit less gentle.
Yes, she grew in that novel too. That's right. Yeah. Did you have anybody from the community or from your family or friends, maybe anybody around here, who came up to you and said, "Was that me in that book? Were you writing about me?"
Nobody said that yet. Diesel, my cat.
Diesel, yes.
He didn't ask about it, but he's there. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Betty, there's one other, I mean, there's lots of characters, and Diesel's a character of its own. There's one other character in this book that I was really interested in, and I just wanted you to say a few words about that. Though it never speaks directly, I have a strong sense that the land itself is a primary character in this story. What was your sense of that as you wrote the book?
It's certainly the motivating force for almost everything that happens. Jeannie certainly considers it when she's making a decision, in the same way you might consider her husband's dead. In the same way you might consider your wife's opinion. I mean, she takes the farm into consideration when she's making decisions. So in that sense, yeah, it is almost
Yeah. And not just her. I mean, almost every central character in that novel there's some sense that they are consulting with the land or loving the land or coveting the land. And I just get the sense of the land as a character, it herself, enfolding the whole human show that's going on. Yeah. And I understand that your next book might explore some of those types of questions a little bit.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So with that, here's the big question. What's next?
Well, I'm working on a novel called A Clear-Cut Case.
A Clear-Cut Case.
Clear-Cut Case.
Excellent.
And I thought I will read to you the first 4 pages.
That would be good.
It's not finished yet, but I spent quite a bit of time working on these particular 4 pages, and
she's written them over and over and over
again. Yeah,
this is great. This is lovely. So as Betty gets set up, I know that probably a few of you have questions, thoughts, things you might like to say. So as soon as Betty is done with this preview of her next book, I'll be coming around with the mic, and we'll do at least a few minutes of Q&A.
So if you've read the entire first novel, you will recognize the 2 major characters. Yeah. Okay. Friday, January 16th. I should have known something was wrong when Stan suggested we park the truck at his place and walk the rest of the way to Ruth and Caleb Brown's house. The proposed route? Across a field covered by 2 feet of snow. The January night was cold, a stiff breeze and 20 below. I ditched my sorrels for light dress boots in honor of our visit to the new neighbors. Stan's truck was warm and the municipal road was good. Why the hell had I gone along with this sketchy harebrained scheme? Got a problem with driving? I asked as he turned onto the track that led up to his century-old homestead. He ignored my question. It's only a short hike, not even a mile. Which would be fine on a summer night. I looked out the window. Snow drifted across the road. Away from the shelter of the trees, the wind would be brutal. Where's your sense of adventure? The thought of sitting in front of a cozy fire, book in hand, and my cat purring beside me was appealing. I left it at home with Diesel. A person gets soft in winter. Stan pulled up beside his garage. Not enough exercise. I rolled my eyes. My friend was a rancher who wintered several hundred head of cattle. Yeah, right. Please, Jeannie, I should have suggested the walk when I asked you to come with me, but I was afraid you'd say no. And now that we're almost at the bronze place, you're counting on my acquiescence. Damn it, Stan, I'm getting too old for such shenanigans. He opened the cab door. 15 minutes and we'll be there. 20 if we're lucky. Grumbling, I unfastened my seatbelt and joined him beside the road. Through the leafless poplars, I could see light in a window of the house across the field. It looked a long distance away. Stan took my arm. Thanks, I owe you one. Darn right you do. A great horned owl hooted, mocking us as we set off on our trek. At first, it was easy going. The snow was packed hard and carried our weight. We made good time as we briskly skimmed its surface. Then I hit a soft patch and plunged into snow up to my knees. Damn. I stumbled and would have fallen without Stan's arm to steady me. You okay? Got snow in my boots, I said. I'll go ahead and make a trail for you. The plan was good in theory, but even with the help of a flashlight, it was hard to step into his footprints. I continually wandered off the path, silently cursing as the snow topped my elegant ankle boots. Before we were halfway across the field, my feet felt like blocks of ice. Remind me why you thought this escapade was a good idea, I said as we stopped beside a small bluff for me to catch my breath. Stan wrapped an arm around my shoulders. You can do it, girl, we're almost there. The lights looked almost as far away as they had when we started, but there was no point in turning back. Chances are we were halfway to the bronze house. I took a few deep breaths and tightened the scarf around my face. Let's go. As we trudged to yet another drift, I reminded myself that I was responsible for getting into this mess. Most women would have insisted that we drive right up to the bronze place. Why hadn't I the good sense to do the same? Stan wouldn't have retaliated if I'd refused his requests. If anything, he was chivalrous to a fault. At 62, he was still the gallant, white-hatted cowboy of TV westerns. Tall and slender, with broad shoulders and dreamy brown eyes, it wasn't the fault of local widows that he'd remained single after a brief marriage 35 years earlier. I'd known him forever. He and my late husband, Frank, had been buddies as kids, and the three of us had gone to school together. I dated him the year I was in grade 11. 5 years later, he'd been best man at my wedding. The three of us had remained friends until Frank's death the previous winter. After that, I hadn't seen much of Stan until he and I had started hanging out together 8 months later. In our part of rural Saskatchewan, the options for social life were limited. Stan raised beef cattle on the family ranch, which he'd inherited from his grandfather. I gardened and painted landscapes on the farm which Frank and I had bought from his parents. Although we considered ourselves neighbors, our properties were more than 20 kilometers apart. Ruth and Caleb Braun had done nothing to improve the situation. They'd moved to the ranch next to Stan's 5 months earlier, but had quickly acquired a reputation for being standoffish. Caleb had rejected my dinner invitation with the excuse that they kept themselves to themselves. And he'd said the same to Stan when he'd invited them for evening coffee. Surely the leopard hadn't changed spots. A dark suspicion reared its head. Stan, do the Browns know we plan to visit? Not exactly. That was a simple question, I said. Well, was your answer a yes or a no? The situation is complicated. I frowned. What's that supposed to mean? It's hard for the women, he said. They must be lonely. They? As in more than one woman? Ruth and Caleb have a daughter, he said. Naomi rides the bus to high school in town. And you know that how? I asked, stumbling as one foot plunged into a good 3 feet of snow. Even through the darkness, I could sense his embarrassment. I've seen her waiting at the end of the driveway. I didn't have the energy to ask further questions. Instead, I kept my eyes fixed on the light ahead, numbly putting one foot in front of the other as we slowly made our way toward Ruth and Caleb's house. So that's the opening, what's the beginning of the first chapter.
Excellent. We're glad to know that Diesel is gonna still be a
Diesel's
character.
still there.
So
He's hanging out, he's getting old, he's 17 now, so.
Diesel is a
Gonna-
hero.
He's a good guy.
So
Yeah.
questions or comments, and I'll bring a mic around to whoever might like to start. Don't be shy.
There are a couple of chairs here that no one's sitting on. If anybody wants to sit, there are 2 chairs right in front.
That's right, Betty. Kim says you would make that trip down faster. Definitely. Yes. Questions, thoughts, comments?
How big a role is Garrett gonna have in the new book?
Well, he does come back in chapter 2.
Are you gonna say more than that?
No,
No,
that's
no, no.
good. But he's
No
back.
spoilers,
He's back.
no spoilers.
Hi, Betty.
I lied.
Mary purchased, my wife purchased the book here and she's read it and I'm only partway into it. And I thought you've, in 5 days or 4 days or wherever I am on it, you've certainly packed a lot in and I think you've passed my own personal test for wanting to read a novel, and that's wanting to find out what happened, and you've certainly accomplished that. I thought it was pretty brave of you. On the cover, it says a Jeannie Wolfert-Lang mystery. It didn't say the only Jeannie Lang.
No, that's right.
So you've given yourself a challenge right off.
Absolutely.
You've got to write another one and maybe a third and fourth one. So I wish you well in doing it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
The third one's gonna be set mainly in Saskatoon, I think. How many murders can you have on one farm, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
Hi, Betty. I just want
Oh,
to say
hi.
congratulations. This
Thank
is
you.
really exciting. I didn't know you were writing a book, so this is
Ah.
really awesome. With this book, do you also have the ending already plotted out?
Yes. Yes.
Question up here?
I read your book and absolutely captivated by it, so thank you so much. I can hardly wait till the other ones come out now. But I have sort of 2 questions. One is maybe pretty simple. I love the titles for your stories, and I'm wondering, as an author, if you participated in that. Were you consulted on the book cover? And I'm really interested in Derek. I'm just glad to hear he's coming back, but I'm wondering about that part of your story. What did that feel like to write about Derek and the relationship?
Well, I thought if I was single, living on the farm, I would want some male companionship for sure. So he's, yeah. Farms are really lonely places for people to live by themselves. I know a few women who do, and I just can't imagine it. So I needed a companion for her, a prospective companion for her. Yeah. Also, everybody likes romance. At least women like romance. So that was an important ingredient in making something that people want to read, I think. Yeah.
I want to know if Doug has any questions about this book. Just kidding, Doug. Just kidding. the titles.
You know what? I really enjoy it. I love wordplay on titles. I like the double meaning of grounds, and also for a clear cut case, the same sort of thing. But they were my choice of titles, yeah. Yeah.
Any other thoughts? Betty, I know we touched on it a little bit in our conversation up at the front. Is there anything that you want to go a bit deeper with in terms of some of the big social issues of, you know, rural Saskatchewan and life on the land? Anything that you know, particularly that you're wrestling with right now?
Right now, I'm I guess you find that out fairly early in the second novel. A farmer who is clear cutting his land and talking about draining some wetlands and using his religious views to legitimize what he's doing. And I think it's realistic. I think that's true for some people, and I don't like it. And I don't want to offend anybody else's sensibilities. My neighbors, for the most part, people in Cochin have been really, really appreciative of the book. I get really good feedback from them. They enjoy reading about their community and about people they know, basically. And I hope that continues into the second book. Writing the same book over again, and so I have to. And I don't. Yeah.
Just a quick survey for the crowd. How many folks would identify as rural or rural adjacent? So like one step away from rural or very close to it. Yeah. You know, Saskatchewan is like that, and I think, Betty, that your writing really dives deep and engages with the types of questions that come up. Even those of us who are urban, we're only usually a step or two away from rural.
Yeah,
so
that's right. Yeah.
Yes.
So may I suggest on that next book, maybe sending a book or a few free books to the politicians?
Yeah, Betty.
I do send my book out to a few people. My friend Catherine Green, who a number of you know, was one of my first readers, and I got really important feedback from her. Yeah.
Maybe the NFU could sponsor the sending of a few of your books to politicians. Speaking of feedback, this is a you know, when we're in these types of conversations, it's always good because authors like to hear and get new ideas. If Betty's series turns into book 2 and book 3, what are some of the issues or characters or scenarios that you'd love to see addressed and created in future novels? Any ideas?
Good question.
Got some takers back here. Oh.
My apologies, I'm not going to answer that question, but maybe someone else can. I just want to know, Betty, have you discussed with your publisher the production of an audiobook?
Well, there is one.
Oh, good.
Oh, I guess I should have said.
Great. And are you going to be doing the audio?
No, and actually,
Oh,
Annette, the woman who's who's the audio reader is the niece of the first president of the National Farmers Union, Roy Atkinson. She's Roy Atkinson's niece, the audiobook reader, which was pure coincidence.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you also could be, you'd be excellent at that, at doing
Oh,
it.
well, thank
You read very, very well.
Oh, thank you. I asked for somebody with a fairly deep voice and a mature years because yeah.
Had you had your hand up, Nettie? No, okay. There were some hands up here about ideas for the future. Put those hands back up so I can see you. Nazim.
Thanks, Shawn. You're doing a great job, by the way. So the clear and present issue, I think, is the rural-urban divide. We are seeing it, well, of
Yeah.
course, in this province, but all over the world, I think.
Yeah.
So I wonder whether you are in a particularly good spot
Yeah.
to address some of the issues from both perspectives.
Sure.
Rural for sure, but
Yeah.
maybe urban as well, because you are,
Yeah.
you hang out here
I do.
often.
I do. I do.
And you know a lot of people
Yeah.
in urban places. I
Yeah.
wonder whether that is something that will make its way
Yeah.
to you.
That's a good point, Nazim. I mean, it's a really important thing to talk about, and I'm not quite sure how to deal with it, but yeah. Yeah. I thought in book number 3, I want to look at food systems. This is as far as I've got. Because farm people raise food and city people eat the food, and well, farm people do too. But looking at the issue of food poverty in Saskatoon, the food bank, people eating at soup kitchens, homelessness. And here you are in the country, there's all this food and there's all these places to live, and rural communities are dying, and there's all these buildings sitting empty, and in Saskatoon you have people sleeping outside in the winter. I don't know how you can bring those two together, but I wanted to somewhat combine rural and urban issues, but I'm just not sure how. Shawn, there's some this way.
Someone else up here? Another idea? Yes. Hey.
Betty, there's no lack of social issues. I'm thinking of book number 4. You can do it on murder in the National Farmers Union community, like who killed off the crow rate? What happened with Viterra? I mean, work in all those kinds of things. And is it too late in, what's this book called? A clear cut
A clear-cut case.
Can you work in inland forest protections, island forest?
Oh,
Yeah, it's not too late. You can rewrite the book.
And the peat moss too. Let's get the peat moss in there. Friends, this has been a really good evening. As you can see, this novel touches on all types of things. It's not only beautifully written with really interesting characters, but it addresses our reality, our shared reality together. And so, Betty, thank you so much for writing this novel, and thank you for inviting all of us to be in conversation with you tonight.
Thank you for hosting.
So Betty is going to be around for a while. There's a nice stack of books